It was just another summer night in the Bronx. But for a 14-year-old boy holding a half-used spray can, it was the night everything changed. Caught painting graffiti behind a grocery store, he was arrested on the spot. His name? Jaylen Martinez. The system called him a criminal, a vandal, a lost cause. But what if they were wrong? Because that same boy, barely old enough to drive, would one day have his art auctioned at Sotheby's for over $100,000. His story isn't just about graffiti. It's about second chances, hidden genius, and the courage to create when no one believes in you. And if you've ever felt judged for being different or silenced for being creative, hit and subscribe like now. This is a story the world needs to hear. Chapter 1. The boy with a spray cane. As a boy, he didn't dream of being a celebrity. He wanted to be seen, recognized. When other kids saw brick walls, Jaylen saw blank canvases. When they played basketball, he stared at murals with names, like Zone, Recon, and Storm. They weren't just tags, they were declarations, statements, proof that someone had dared to leave their mark. At 12, he scraped together a few crumpled bills and bought his first can of spray paint. Late at night, while the neighborhood slept, Jaylen sneaked out to a forgotten alleyway and painted his alias, J-Storm, a blend of his name and his mood, a storm waiting to burst. Under that flickering streetlight, he felt powerful, proud, finally real. He dreamed of one day painting a wall so beautiful that people would stop and stare, not in judgment, but in awe. He imagined leading tours of his work, kids pointing and saying, "He did that." Maybe even opening a gallery where street kids could paint freely. But 2 years later, that dream was shattered, at least for a while. Caught red-handed tagging the back of a grocery store, Jaylen was arrested. He remembered the officer's cold voice. "You just threw your future away, kid." His school record was ruined. His mother sobbed quietly at the hearing. Neighbors shook their heads, and teachers whispered, "He had potential, shame." The world saw a delinquent, but Jaylen still saw something else in himself, a flicker, a color not yet named. Chapter 2. The unlikely break. Seeing his hunger to create, she pulled strings to get him into a free summer art camp, one designed for youth offenders and at-risk teens. It was held at a community center outside the Bronx. Jaylen almost didn't go. The shame still burned, but he showed up, nervous, quiet. And then something clicked. The camp wasn't about perfection. It was about expression. On the first day, Jaylen was assigned a public mural wall. Legal, welcomed. His hands shook as he sprayed the first line, but by the third hour, he was completely immersed. Layers of color spilled across concrete as Jaylen poured every suppressed word, memory, and hope into the wall. For the first time, he felt like he was painting with permission, not just from society, but from himself. One day, while Jaylen was finishing a piece, a phoenix rising from an urban skyline, a local photographer happened to walk by. He paused, raised his camera, and snapped. The photo showed Jaylen mid-stroke, his eyes locked in focus, a sliver of paint on his cheek. That image ended up on a local art blog titled "Youth Reclaiming the Walls." It went semi-viral. Not millions of views, but enough to reach someone unexpected. A street art collector named Richard Gao was no ordinary collector. He specialized in outsider art, works created by individuals beyond the traditional art world. Something about Jaylen's mural struck a chord. He tracked down the camp director, asked for the boy's name, and showed up unannounced during the final week of camp. Jaylen was startled. Gao walked up, extended a hand, and said, "How much for that wall?" Of course, the wall wasn't for sale, but Jaylen's sketchbook was. Inside were rough drawings of trains, faces, dreams, and chaos. Gao flipped through silently, then handed Jaylen an envelope with 5 crisp $100 bills. "This," he said, "is your beginning. Jaylen didn't cry because of the money. He cried because, for the first time, someone outside his block, his school, or his home didn't just tolerate his art. Chapter 3. From the Streets to Sotheby's. He experimented with texture, message, and movement, sometimes using stencils, sometimes layering stories within stories. His themes evolved: identity, struggle, justice, redemption. He painted not to escape the streets, but to reimagine them. Word spread. Artists began inviting him to collaborate. Cafes offered him entire brick walls. Indie musicians commissioned cover art. A local warehouse offered its shutter doors. Jaylen began hosting free workshops for kids who reminded him of himself. By 18, he was featured at a Brooklyn underground art show titled Ink in the Concrete. His mural, Dreamers Don't Sleep, earned local headlines for blending graffiti with classical calligraphy. A feature in a street art zine caught the eye of a curator connected with Sotheby's Emerging Voices program. Jaylen received an invitation to submit work, something he thought was spam. When he realized it was real, he painted non-stop for days. The result? A massive canvas called Resurface, a haunting blend of his neighborhood skyline, a phoenix rising behind it, and faded. Police tape interwoven with childhood dreams. The piece went up for auction and sold for $112,000. Jaylen didn't cheer. He stood still. He thought about the cracked pavement he once walked with a spray can in his backpack. He thought about the judge who told him he'd never make it. He thought about his mother crying quietly in the hallway outside the school office. From there, everything escalated. TEDx invited him to speak on the power of reclamation through art. Levi's and Spotify collaborated with him on campaigns centered on youth voices. He created an augmented reality graffiti experience on Instagram that went viral, and yet Jaylen stayed grounded. He still took the subway, still taught kids, still painted with the same urgency he had at 14. Because to him, success wasn't about galleries or auctions. It was about turning silence into stories and spray cans into instruments of change. Chapter 4. A movement beyond him. With national attention and corporate deals behind him, Jaylen could have coasted. But instead, he returned to the same neighborhoods where he once feared walking alone. He launched Spray for Change, a non-profit organization dedicated to helping underserved youth find voice and value through legal street art. What started as weekend workshops in abandoned lots became a citywide movement. Jaylen personally mentored teens, some on probation, some fresh out of juvenile detention, and helped them turn raw emotion into powerful murals. He worked with local governments to establish graffiti peace zones, designated walls where young people could legally paint. Jaylen believed giving them space wasn't enough. They needed structure, feedback, and someone to tell them, that's not just paint, that's power. His movement spread quickly, from Philadelphia to Oakland, and then overseas to Cape Town and Bogota. Spray for Change became a global initiative. Jaylen was soon invited to lead a television docu-series called Young Walls, traveling to some of the world's toughest neighborhoods to spotlight hidden graffiti talents. In each episode, he offered one young artist mentorship, a scholarship, or a professional exhibition opportunity. But more than money or fame, Jaylen gave something else: hope. For kids who had only ever seen prison walls or school detentions, he offered a different canvas, and they painted back, with colors the world had forgotten. Jaylen once said in an interview, "Graffiti saved my life. Now I use it to save others. I don't want to be the only voice from the streets. I want to be the first of many." Jaylen Martinez isn't just an artist. He's a mirror for every young person who was ever told they didn't belong. For every dreamer who dared to draw outside the lines. His journey from vandal to visionary didn't erase his past. It honored it. He didn't escape the streets. He transformed them. One color, one voice, one wall at a time. And maybe that's the point. We all have walls, Some built by others, some built by ourselves. But what if, like Jaylen, we chose to paint them? Not with fear, but with hope. So if you've ever been told you're too much, too loud, too different, remember Jaylen. He was once a problem. Now he paints solutions, and you can too.